been working on my own, like incorporated as Redcraft Consulting for a couple of years. I've been working with a lot of government clients over that time, and I was one of the earlier ones to join Cansulta. I think I was in like the first 20 or 30 or so consultants to learn about it. I learned about it through Good Lawyer. There was a friend of mine at Good Lawyer who had said, he knew someone that was doing something like Good Lawyer, but for consulting, and had recommended it. So that was great. And so now I do, I've been working with one of our Cansulta clients in the mornings, typically for like an hour and a half. It's been going pretty well. I think we've booked maybe like 15 hours or so, or 10 to 15 hours so far in just a month and a half or so. And went from a consulting project where there was like a presentation to now it's more of a bit more of a coaching, a retainer type of service. So that's going around pretty well. What else? On the side, I'm trying to, I have a full-time job. I do that 6-7 hours a day. I have a contract. I do consulting work on service design for government, and I do that another 4 hours a day. And when I do have other time, I work on creating a bit of a membership. I have this idea for a membership that serves the veteran community. So I'm plodding away at that slowly in the background. So work is work is fun, but yeah. I did a business degree, undergrad degree from university, finished it in 2005. And then I was working for the government for quite a while. And it wasn't until 2012 that I had enough of living in Ottawa, and I wanted to travel and do things differently. I learned from a consultant a little bit about the world of consulting, and I had an opportunity to get maybe like 3 months paid salary so that I could make a career switch. And it so happened that I reached out to the right people. I were actually a lot of former veterans who had moved on into business and got into consulting. And through that, like networking, slowly and surely, it took maybe 3 or 4 months, I ended up getting an offer to work at a consulting firm in Toronto. And that was 2012, spring of 2012. And then I was consulting in a firm for 5 years, with a year and a half in between doing international consulting in Africa. So I ended up getting onto a project that was a year and a half, and moved my wife and I over there, shut everything down in Canada, went and lived in a company house in Botswana, and worked for their big e-government project for the country for a year and a half. And then when it winded down, I came back to Canada, was trying to figure out what would be my next sort of specialization in consulting. And so I did that till 2018, I think. And then my son was born, and I was looking for a way to slow down. So I ended up moving out of consulting into healthcare, and I was working as a business analyst. And that was great for a couple of years, and COVID hit. And I was doing it while we had COVID going on, so I was doing that for a little while. And then eventually I got an offer to join an Australian tech firm, essentially as a consultant for defense, and that was close to my interests, so I made the shift back into this kind of consulting world. And it's right around that time that I was basically flat broke, and I was like, had a kid, had no money, was like, I gotta make a bunch of changes. And so the long story short was, I just got really, really ambitious and eager to make something happen, and then lots of other opportunities kind of came up, and ever since that, it's been So they've been getting better and going up from there. So, yeah. It's a lot more modern than I had anticipated. I thought first it was going to be like, I don't know what I thought. I thought it was going to be a little bit more outdoorsy, a little bit more like roughing it. And I was surprised, really surprised. Coming to Botswana, there was, at least where we were in the capital, it was like a small city, but it was pretty modern in a lot of ways. It had like nightclubs, and they had malls and plazas, and people driving Mercedes around, hotels, the whole bit. But Botswana was a nice place to work. Had to adapt to a different culture, adapt to like how people work there. Some of the cultural norms are really different. Working closely with a team in that kind of environment was very different. You have to kind of work hard and then sort of have to make your own sort of relief by going on vacation and doing stuff to reconnect. Sometimes with reconnecting with family, or if it was just to get out of work, because living and working there, you would literally, your closest friends, your closest peers were also your colleagues, and you would see them from 6 a.m. until midnight, and you would do all your weekend stuff would be with your colleagues. Your gym time would be with your colleagues. So it's a little bit like Big Brother in a sense. So, but it was pretty interesting. It's hot. Paid well. The Botswana was a beautiful place to check out. The people there were super friendly and nice. The work was, interestingly, the work was interesting, and the work was also, at times it was slower, a lot slower than what we're used to in North America. So sometimes the challenge with work was more about just having good relationships with people, and less about, the project itself. So that was a neat experience. Yeah. Probably one is, I like that in this field, it's not so structured. Mm-hmm. I like that you get to invent the relationship with your clients. You get to invent and imagine new ways to solve a problem they might not have taken before. So the idea of being in one job, doing one set of things, doesn't appeal to me as much as this anymore. They both have pros and cons, but what drives me now is probably number one, like the time freedom and the opportunity to own my day and own my schedule. I have a little saying that says, your life, what is it? Your days are your life in miniature. And that was probably one of the best sayings. I heard it from Robin Sharma. Actually, it was a Torontonian author. And it basically, the thing I took from that was, if you want something to happen in your life, everybody has a view of what their life should look like. But if you want something in your life, you need to be able to create a trace that leads you there in your day. Yeah. And if you look at what you do in a day, if you don't have, I extend it to and a week, because there's some things you only do on a Saturday or a Sunday, or or you only have time to do, right? But if let's say if it doesn't happen in your week, and that week keeps hitting repeat, you can't expect a different result. So with consulting, what's incredible is just the opportunity to have a set goal, define that with your client, and then as much as possible, organize yourself, manage your own time to achieve it on your own terms, and in such a way that you get paid well to do it. It allows you to fit those things in your life that you want to fit in your life. Nobody has to tell you you can't have vacation, you can't do what you want when you want. Yeah. And it's all based on commitment. So it's just as conceivable you say, no, I'm not going to commit to that. And if you are committing to it, then, you're setting the ground rules. I find with a lot of like traditional employment, a lot of those things are just kind of held over you. And it's like, well, we won't keep your job if you don't do what we ask.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I'm just done with that. The other thing that keeps me going was the day I found out I was broke. And I wrote a card to myself. I have it here. I look at it almost all the time. It's got little zebras. It reminds me of Botswana.
Yeah.
But it was Monday, July the 30th, 2018. My son was like a month old at this point. And in it, I basically had $10 to my name, and it was all in change in my car. We had financial troubles, hit financial rock bottom. Things started costing more than we knew. Job changes, savings had been depleted to make other things happen for family. And I basically had just said, I was watching the clock, and I had a client assignment in North York, had to leave from Hamilton. I didn't have enough gas in my car to drive there, and I had to be there for 7:30 a.m., something like that. And I thought to myself, and I was watching the clock, watching my bank account, just stressing like you've never experienced, waiting. And the only thing I could run through my mind was, I hope my paycheck shows up. I hope when I keep hitting refresh that I'll see it in the bank account. Because if I don't, I'm gonna have to call work and give them a reason why I'm not there to do the consulting work the day of. And luckily, the money came through that night, and I remember that was the moment I said to myself, no matter what you do with your time, you were never going to find yourself in a position like that again. And I made that commitment to myself, and I said, when you find opportunities, you're going to hunt them down. You're never going to be a victim of financial lack ever again. And ever since then, first thing I started doing is I took the next opportunity I could get, and it was teaching kids in China English online from 4 a.m. to 8 a.m. every morning. I did that for 6 months to make enough extra money to pay for all the things that we needed.
Yeah.
And it bridged the gap until I was doing consulting work independently. And so it was like a long road trying to get back from that point. But yeah, I haven't looked back. And so when people are like, why do you do this? Like, why do you work that much? Why do you, what keeps you going? It's really just my wife and son and that commitment I made to myself that I'd do anything it took to make sure that, I was never in a position where I was looking for somebody else to blame for it.
Yeah.
And I realized I was like, that's my fault. I made enough wrong choices to get us in a position where we didn't have that safety net.
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah, that's just never going to happen again. So. Jim Rohn is a great author. He's, I think he's passed away now, but he calls it the day your life turns around. And he says there's a whole bunch of different reasons why people take a drastic pivot. But one of them is this, the whole never again statement. And he tells a story of a wealthy, successful female stock finance manager or CEO he met in New York City. And he's like, how did you get here? It's a tough world out there, and how did you get to this position? And her story was, she was a stay-at-home mom. One day, she asked her husband who was working, she asked him for $10. She wanted to do something for herself. It was just $10. And he was defensive. He was like, why should I give you the money? Why do you need it? And then she said that was her that was her day. She said, I will never going to find myself having to ask anyone for money to do something. And then she turned herself into a senior executive in this company, worked her way from the ground up. So, like, oh, it's a good story. Jim Rohn, he's a good, if you listen to anything about life's ups and downs, Jim Rohn is fantastic. I fail, and I fail again, and I fail again, learning and trying to build the course and the membership piece. So I take my lesson from that, and probably the best lesson there is maybe 3 pieces, little tidbits of advice that have helped me. One is don't try to reinvent the thing. Find an expert, and just like with Cansulta, like seek out the expert, buy into what it is they have available for you, and leverage that. That's gonna save a lot of time and headache and like spinning your wheels trying to imagine and create it out of thin air. So learn from the best. And then a second tidbit is a good saying I've learned, I've had to apply this in my thinking, is the idea of incrementally better. And that idea is you don't have to get it perfect. You just have to produce something, produce it, share it, get some feedback fast, make it a little better, release that, refine that, because everyone fears that whatever they're going to put out there, they're going to be judged for. But the truth is, what I've seen is observed this, is anyone who's really like coined a market or done very well in something or has a great product or a great service, they only got there because they failed at it enough times to get there. And there's no shortcut to that. There's no shortcut to the failure. You have to be willing to say a little better each time is progress. If I just make progress enough times, I'm going to get to where I'm trying to go. And there's no other way to get there. So incrementally better, really good piece of advice. Along with that goes 2 other things. One is ask yourself, how can I make this even simpler? For me, I've had to tell myself that, because even with Redcraft, it's always a challenge to take something that's, 1, that you're passionate about, or 2, that's kind of complex. Most things are these days. And to actually communicate it and have somebody make progress with it, whether it's a product or a service, it has to be in its simplest form. And sometimes, really, it's true that sometimes just simpler and faster is way better, is way more beautiful. And then the corollary to that is, how do you make incremental progress? How do you try to keep making things simpler? Is just ask yourself, what's the next right step to take? Because in business, especially if you're doing your own business or you're creating something, you got a list. Like, think of Cansulta, it probably has like a list, a to-do list of like 800 things. All of them are good or should be done or could be done, but not all of them should or could or must be done now. And that's a huge piece of like insight, is if you can identify just what is the next right thing to do and just focus on that only, you'll get that thing done, and you can ask yourself that question again in 10 minutes, and you can do that next thing. And that's actually how you move the damn thing forward. Otherwise, you get here and then something else opens up and 40 new things show up, and you're starting, and you have to constantly reconsider all of it and constantly try to calibrate, where am I in this journey? And if that's all you do, you just you just end up in this whirlwind of to-dos and half done, missed opportunity here, and this is half-assed, this is broken. And it's like, what's the next right thing to do? And when you ask yourself that, you usually can figure it out. It's usually not impossible. It's usually something right under your nose. You're like, yeah, actually, if I just did that next thing, and that's all I worried about, nothing else but that one thing. If I did it, man, then next week or tomorrow or whatever, I'm gonna be ahead. So the next right thing works in almost all occasions. It works when you're planning a wedding. It works when you're building a business, taking your kid to the amusement park. Like,
No, those are great.
yeah. And I find the older I get, the more important those things become, because the more attention people want from you, and from all corners, your life just gets more full. So having a nice rule like the incrementally better, what's the next right thing, keep it simple, even more so. All of those really help you continue to move forward. Just half of the battle is just moving forward, not getting stuck too long in one place. Because the risk, the other side of that is, if you've got a dream or a business idea, and it stays stagnant too long, it'll die. It'll die because the intention you had, the energy you had when you originally thought of it, you originally started working on it, you won't be able to maintain it. If you stay in one place too long, or it gets too stagnant, either self-doubt will creep in, and you'll doubt whether that was a good idea or whether you were capable of delivering on it, and you'll give up. Or the other issue is, if it stays too long in one place, someone else might come up with it and do it better. And that's a scary thought when you're when you're an entrepreneur. Sometimes I think it's actually super motivating for you to tell yourself, if I don't hurry up and get over myself and get out of my own way and overcome that fear, if I don't get to work on this and make it happen, I'm going to read about it in the newspaper, and someone else will produced it, created it, released it. And so there's a first to market. It's like a first to claim it. It doesn't matter if it's a small idea, or if it's a big idea, but in the market anyway, if it's, something in your house, it's probably fine. But if it's out there in a competitive market, then there's an urgency to move on it. So I always tell myself that too, is like, get to work on that, because if you don't get it done, someone else is going to beat me to it.